channel.
Ok, buonasera a tutti. Facciamo una breve introduzione in italiano. Allora, buonasera a tutti. Abbiamo ospite con noi Massimo Mazza, che è un attivista conservatore canadese. Massimo, I'm just doing a very short introduction in Italian just to introduce you to our viewers. And quindi continueremo la nostra chiacchierata con Massimo in inglese. Pazientate, avremo i sottotitoli, non so quando, ma li avremo. Quindi i non anglofoni purtroppo verranno penalizzati, però sono certo che sarà sicuramente interessante. All right, let's switch back to English. And all right, Massimo, welcome to our show. We're very happy to have you here. And we are a group of friends who are running this show. Basically, which is basically about foreign policy as well as Italian and European and North American politics in general, with a largely, I would say, lib conservative angle. I would say this, and so for this reason and for many other reasons, we're very happy to have you here. And so first of all, I will be the one asking the questions, but not the only one, I guess. And so for starters, I would just like to just ask you if you could tell us very briefly, I mean, who you are, what you do, and maybe why you do it.
Sure. So my name is Massimo Mazza. I'm a student at Concordia University studying economics. And I also represent the Canadian Taxpayer Federation. I've worked with them in the past. And I like to hold events, try to engage students in talks and discussions about more libertarian-leaning policies, because I'm a strong believer in the free market. I believe our government's very bloated in Canada, and we're seeing a immense decline in our standard of living here. And I think that's largely due to a lot of interference on the part of the government. So I think we need to do more to lessen the red tape and allow Canadians to make good decisions, which they already are intent on doing. I think we need to just get out of the way and make that possible. So that's something I'm very passionate about.
Wow, this is great. By the way, when I said that we have a lib conservative leaning, I'm
Intended libertarian leaning, conservative leaning.
I may have.
We are conservatarians, as they say somewhere.
I may have used the wrong words, because I understand that in Italy and Europe we mean a different thing when we say liberal compared to North American.
That's what I figured.
So a liberal person a liberal person in Europe or in Italy is someone who supports the free market, which is exactly what you said.
Yeah.
And could I ask you, like, how you got into this and why you're doing it in the first place?
Sure. So I was originally I was a supporter of the Liberal Party in Canada. I was mostly to do with the fact that I really liked my MP, Marc Garneau. So I initially voted, first time I was eligible to vote, I voted for the Liberals, and I was very optimistic about the direction the country was going to be going in. But of course, seeing the results, in only a few years, we saw immense increase in cost of housing. We also saw very unsustainable immigration levels, which kind of worsened the housing crisis. And we also saw a lot of pauses on like major projects that are crucial for the Canadian economy. So we've stagnated for the past 10 years. And so I began to look elsewhere, and I made some friends that were conservative that introduced me to conservative leaning organizations. And through that, I was able to eventually come to understand myself as more of a conservative, and I've come to appreciate the movement, both within Canada and all around the world.
Well, this is great, and now this brings me to a question which is about something we very much care for. I mean, my friends and I, because as far as I understand, because Lorenzo told us about it, you guys in Canada, you have. I mean, it's not difficult to find student organization for each party, at least the major parties. And so was it hard for you to access this group of conservative friends? And do you think you guys were, in a way, seeing your activity made more difficult by other associations?
Yeah, so I found that it was not difficult at all to access the sort of conservative student network, because right now there are a lot of organizations, and I find that they're investing quite a bit in trying to obtain a presence, especially in my province, in Quebec, because the Conservatives, obviously very successful in Western Canada, Alberta, Saskatchewan, but Quebec has historically been very difficult for Conservative Party to win any seats in. Most voters in Quebec will vote for the Liberal Party or the Bloc Québécois, which is a party that seeks to represent Quebec interests only. And so gaining a foothold in this part of Canada has been very important for a lot of these organizations. So when I reached out to them and I mentioned that I was interested in helping them gain a presence at Concordia and Montreal at large, they were enthusiastic about that. And soon I was invited to a lot of events, both within Quebec and also in different provinces, to kind of talk about what I was working on. So I would say the current scene is very positive. I think we're growing a lot, and yeah.
But what do you think it has been the elements that have allowed this growth of conservative organization? It has been, forgive me with the expression that I will use, foreign interference, in the sense American association that try to help you, for example, to create Canadian versions of them. For example, it's famous, the American Taxpayer Association. You mentioned the Canadian Taxpayer Federation. So I thought maybe they're trying for these people to have a conservative partner in another country, or it has been all, how can I say, a bottom-up process. It has been the Conservative Party able, during the Harper years, during this period in opposition, to create this great amount of association that also taken the youth organizations, because sometimes they say that right wing are not able to take the youth in their federation association, because they should be the friends of already people that are in conservative. There should be sons of people that are already conservative, that are rich guys, so not rich guys. There is this prejudice, at least in Europe, of the right wing organizations when there is a youth in it.
A lot of these organizations are homegrown, so most of them are Canadian. For instance, the Canadian Taxpayer Federation has been around for at least 30 years. Of course, we have a relationship with similar taxpayer federations in other countries, but we're not really part of the same thing. We're independent. These organizations also typically are nonpartisan, so we're not directly funded by or held responsible to the Conservative Party. Rather, these are advocacy organizations, student organizations, or think tanks that, of course, hold views that align more with Conservative Party positions. And so by engaging students in discussions and holding events, we potentially do aid the Conservative cause in getting people in the network. Of course, if you try to apply for a job in politics, and you mentioned that you were with this organization, and people know that suggests that you hold certain views, which is of course, a positive thing. But no, I found mostly, with the exception of Students for Liberty, most things were Canadian grown. Some organizations that have been really prominent in my experience have been aside from the Canadian Taxpayer Federation, has also been the Montreal Economic Institute, which is a think tank based in Montreal, and they've been investing a lot in student events, showing up to different universities across the country, and they've put together something called the Liberty and Leadership program, which I attended in June, where they try to connect students and young professionals from across the country, and perhaps connect them with mentors in fields such as law or politics or economics and other adjacent areas.
So they created, we can say, a virtuous cycle, because the people enter in this association, then they find good results, then reinvest again, and it's all a compounding interest, we can say.
Yeah.
Yes, we've been asking these questions, and because we are, in Italy especially, and in Europe at large, I think it is so much harder for younger people to access these associations. Partly because, for example, Italian right-wing parties are very, relationship based. I mean, the guy who knows another guy who knows another guy, and then you can get in. And it's and they don't even try to reach out to younger people in university. So this is one aspect of the problem, and the other aspect of the problem is that, like, especially when you're young at the high school and university, you're very much frowned upon if you hold right-wing views and free market views, like I was personally, but let's not touch this sphere. So we are very much positively amazed by what you're telling us, actually.
Yeah. I can tell you that when I was in my first university in Perugia, in Italy, I felt like a Western German person in the East German. So with all the spice surrounded, just because I was having a biography of Margaret Thatcher. So you can imagine the kind of situation that I had in Italy. In Groningen, in the Netherlands, has been at least easier, because you are allowed to talk, but then they find another way to ask you. The ones that we already seen on the news and that Lorenzo showed us, the kind of stuff they do. Marches, they shout, they created the stupid slogans. We know what they do. And it's a pity that we can. No, I will keep the thing that I was going to say for the private. Don't worry. I don't want to create you problems.
Well, it's okay. But wow, this is very interesting. Of course, because it's like a breath of fresh air for us, and so well, building on this, and then we will shift to like broader terms, because I like to hear your views on Canada especially, and like, if I may ask you, like, you're doing this because you wish to get to a higher level, into politics or activism, or that is not necessarily your top priority, let's say?
I'm doing it mostly because I believe in the cause, but I also found that it's been very useful for me in terms of making connections with people, and that opens up doors for me in terms of maybe entering a political career after the end of my studies, perhaps either directly working in Parliament or at a think tank.
Well, my friend well, is very, he has a background in political science. He's very skilled at detailing how he would write and implement a certain policy. I think you'd have a very good conversation on that. But in shifting to Canada, so you mentioned uh, mm, quality of living standards declining in recent years. And I've seen lots of YouTube videos of people being very pessimistic about it, saying that they are leaving Canada because of living costs and real estate costs and taxes going up, and that it's crazy. I'm like, what the hell? I mean, I went to Canada in 2017. I was an exchange student, and I found a pretty much nice place to live in, like with a very high cost, living standard. So can you tell us how and why you think living standards have gone down in such a way?
Sure. So one of the main things I look at is the general cost of living, along with real wage growth. And of course, there are many ways to measure this, but if we were to use kind of a blunt measuring tool like GDP per capita, we can see that Canada was sort of on par with the United States at about the early 2010s. And then we have seen after about 2014, we see a major difference. So at the moment now, we're at about 53,000, whereas the US is at 81. Whereas in 2012, we were about at the same level. What we've seen generally is that most sectors have not really grown that much. Wages have not grown much, but housing has cost of housing has grown exponentially. And in most of the major cities in the country, it's simply become unaffordable. For instance, the median house in Vancouver would cost at least $1 million. What I've seen here is $1.17 million Canadian. Toronto's not that far off. So that's really become unaffordable. We have higher our housing costs more than it does in the United States, whereas our wages have not grown for a very long time. We've also seen programs that have been abused. For instance, the temporary foreign worker program. The idea is that workers, companies here that can't find Canadian workers to do jobs, they can import people from other countries to do those jobs. But there's been a lot of fraud, unfortunately. And so we've had a lot of, say, for example, fast food restaurants put out fake job listings, not reply to Canadian applicants, and then all of a sudden import foreign workers from countries such as India who are willing to work for pennies and are having to work under really poor labor conditions. And with this program, temporary foreign worker program, the government actually subsidizes part of the wages. So in the end, we're paying for other people to come in and take jobs which have otherwise gone to low wage Canadian workers, teenagers, and all that. So it's become a lot more competitive for Canadians to find any job at all.
No, but in fact, another thing that I remember is that...
Wait, Lorenzo, I think Lorenzo is trying to say something, but we cannot actually hear you, Lorenzo. We can't hear you. Non ti
No, it's
sentiamo.
from before that he's having microphone problems. I don't understand why.
Can you try to fix this problem, Lorenzo? Because I wanted to give you a question if you want to ask it. But Massimo, can you explore what are the ways in which the Canadian government has stepped foot in the lives of Canadian people the way it did it before Trudeau arrived? And I'm sure that must have contributed to get into this situation. But can you tell us how?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one I would point to is the energy sector policies. So a lot of our green energy policies have kind of led to a decline in investment in energy. Canada is, I believe, the third largest reserves of oil and gas, and we have failed to properly explore that. A lot of our policies have kind of made it less attractive, less desirable to exploit these resources. We've also had the carbon tax, which has led to made that less attractive, and it's also made everything more expensive. We also see a lot of issues with the regulatory environment as far as mining is concerned. So if you want to set up a mine, I believe it takes like over a year to get even the permit to start looking into that, which is a real shame because we have immense mineral reserves that are not being exploited properly. These present a lot of job opportunities in rural communities, and that's something that Canada was previously depending on a lot. Other things include, of course, I touched on immigration earlier. The degree to which we've had unsustainable immigration has been so bad that even our statistics agency can't even predict how many people we're going to have in the next few months. So a couple of months they said 40 million people, and then now they just updated and they said that we've reached about 41.1, and that's not accounting for illegal immigration as well. So that's become a bit of a problem because what we've seen is very low economic growth plus increase in the amount of workers who are, increasing the burden on our services, social services like healthcare. There's also been failures with the current government in trying to address that as well. The whole healthcare situation across Canada has been disastrous. If somebody wants to come here and we're a doctor in their country before, it's a very long process to become licensed to work in Canada. Furthermore, we have very few seats available for Canadians seeking to go into medical school. So we have a chronic shortage of doctors.
Well, it is indeed like as bad as I thought. Not just listening to Lorenzo because he's been in Canada for some time now, but also like watching YouTube channel videos of people living there. But Lorenzo, did you manage to fix your mic?
Yes.
Okay, please go on
Okay.
if you.
At the same time, even if there is a high percentage of immigration, actually there is a labor shortage in some sectors like construction and agriculture, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a shame also our immigration system, which relies on a point system where one is typically awarded more points if they have a greater degree, like for example, a PhD. The issue with that is that we don't really have labor shortages in these areas, but we have labor shortages in these other areas, construction and agricultural work and these other fields which don't really benefit in any way from immigrants who have high postgraduate degrees.
For sure, absolutely.
And do you think, what do you think would take to reverse the situation? I mean, do you think that Pierre Poilievre, I'm not sure I pronounced it correctly, but do you think that he has the right plan? Are you attracted to his agenda?
I am. I think that a lot of the issues we have are structural, so it'd be very hard to get substantial change in just a matter of few years. But I think that his policies are kind of would bring us in a better direction. Of course, one thing I would wish that was explored a bit more was a kind of a cap on immigration, simply because as it stands right now, the Canadians cannot afford housing, and increase in the amount of immigration is worsening that situation. So what I do appreciate about Poilievre's platform is that he's looking to get rid of a lot of the red tape involved in building housing. So hopefully we can see a increase in housing construction throughout the country. But that said, the shortage is so major, it's so large that I suspect that unless we can put a cap on immigration and or maybe import a lot of workers who have specific construction skills that would be able to apply them immediately, I'm kind of a bit pessimistic about whether he'll be able to really change the housing situation here.
Well, he also suggested building the homes. I mean, it's one of his slogans. So, but with that being said, we don't know how. Maybe there's something I was missing, but I don't think we know how many homes he's planning to have built.
Yeah, exactly. The issue is that a lot of homes need to be built, and increasing amount of homes need to be built every year because we have such high levels of immigration, and so I do think it's really positive that we're looking to reduce a lot of the red tape involved in building homes. That said, I'm just a bit concerned about whether we'll be able to keep up with the demand. So that remains to be seen.
Well, I'd just say Canadians keep up with the housing demand because I'm trying to get there too. We'll see if that will ever be possible. But all right, I don't know if my friends have any more questions on Canada, because I'd like to hear your perspective on Europe as well, because I think that a North American perspective on Europe could be very much interesting. I don't know. By the way, I'm not sure how familiar you are with what's going on in Italy.
I'm not terribly familiar, unfortunately, but I found it very interesting.
Yeah, it's a source of laughter, a very good one. But I'll give the floor to my colleagues, to my friends, if they have questions.
No, because one question I have is that how it has been weird that in the same moment that inflation arrived in America and Canada, both Trudeau and Biden have given a default to the Ukraine conflict, or with energy prices from some outwhere because of the oil in Russia and something like that, when most of the time it has been caused by the internal regulation. And I wish to know how much Trudeau has copied Biden on that, because Biden said, so we need to intervene with the Inflation Reduction Act, stuff like that. And you confirmed us that he did something similar with a temporary job reform, the one that you mentioned, with to take the people from out where to do Canadian jobs. And so my curiosity is to know how much he used excuses like external factors to justify the inflation rate, rather than saying, no, it's my fault that I printed a lot of money through the Bank of Canada.
From what I've observed, I found that the current government has kind of avoided ascribing any reason behind the high inflation. I mean, one thing that has been a recurring theme is the whole supply chain issue caused by the pandemic, and kind of the lag in, price signals, kind of lagging in that changing things. Other recurring themes are also, of course, like economic growth issues. These are the things that are generally we generally point towards, but of course that's of course I'm a strong believer that it's largely due to a lot of red tape, a lot of impediments on sectors, very valuable sectors like the oil and gas and natural resource extraction. I think that's really been what is responsible for the stagnation in the economy, as well as the housing issue, which has made it very unattractive for Canadian workers to try to make a good career for themselves in the cities. It's become completely unaffordable. So we've seen a high degree of brain drain. We have currently an agreement with the United States that allows certain professionals to be able to work in the United States. And so we've seen a major exodus of doctors, computer science, really like tech-related professionals, and other workers that qualify under that.
Well, and there's something I was curious about. Like, we have heard Donald Trump saying that he will put tariffs on Canadians, and Poilievre said Canada first, and I was like, what the hell is that supposed to mean? Like, do you have an idea? Do you have an idea how he plans to save Canada's ass on that? I think you guys are gonna need that.
Yeah, my understanding of the tariffs at the moment, at least, there seems to be being used as a bargaining chip to help maybe in order for the Canadians to cooperate with Trump's plans on handling the border situation between the Canada-U.S. border, along with a few other trade-related issues. So I'm skeptical as to whether we're actually going to see that much in terms of tariffs. That said, I'm quite optimistic about how Poilievre will be interacting with the U.S. administration, because so far the Trudeau administration has proven really inadequate for that. He's put out a lot of statements recently. Trudeau has put out statements actually mentioning how it's a shame that America did not elect Kamala, that they're not ready for a female president. And I see that as a major diplomatic failure on the part of the current government. You don't say that, right? When Trump is going to be elected, is going to enter office, that's going to probably not going to be very good for us. So
I remember Oprah Winfrey saying, "Oh, if Donald Trump gets elected, I'm moving to Canada." Last time I checked, she didn't.
Yeah, well, it doesn't really make sense for anybody to move in Canada. We're in a far worse shape than the United States, and current outlook is looking pretty bad. But remaining optimistic that Poilievre can steer us in a better direction, as Harper did.
But I found it very surprising in a negative sense, because when I came to Canada in 2017, those were the earlier times of the Trudeau presidency, and it didn't seem that bad at the time. And then, we talked about this with Lorenzo and Kala lots of times, and he explained to me. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lorenzo. He explained to me that things got so much worse after his coalition with the NDP. Like, would you agree with this, or do you think that he was just as bad or nearly as bad from day one?
Well, I think it takes time for policies to really have a visible impact on a given country or economy. So in 2017, he had only been in power for about 2 years. And so a lot of the, what represented the current state of things was largely due to policies that were passed under Harper. It was too early to see kind of the consequences of that administration. I think the handling of the COVID pandemic definitely has soured things a lot. I think also just the cost of living crisis was not nearly as bad. I think because we did not see the same degree of abuse for the temporary foreign worker program. We also didn't see the same degree of immigration as we did after around 2018, which is starting to then reach about 500,000 per year and then over.
Wow. And like for example, I think that the exchange programs with the francophone countries are, I think that they are even more generous, or just as generous. I mean, I remember seeing lots of people from African countries and many other francophone countries getting the scholarships and so many other things. Like many they like francophone people. I remember the francophone students at Laval University. They had way more privileges than the non-francophone non-francophone students. It's like just as an example. And I don't know if we should. I don't know if we should shift to many the European area. Like so, and my focus would be on AI, for example. Like uh, in Europe, we have come to the paradox, the unbelievable paradox by which we don't have companies. We hardly have companies that have made that are working with AI, because most of them are from the US. And even the European ones, especially the one who managed to become unicorns, they did it after moving to the United States. So this is such an unbelievable thing, and especially people on the left, but in even the Italian right, they are so skeptical about it. They are so afraid of it. Like, uh, what do you think free market conservative approach would be to AI? Should we just do you think it should be just let it we should just let it go? We should, I mean, let it work and let it develop on its own? Do you think there's actually people are right to think of at least some correctives, I should say?
I believe that it's definitely worth looking into, appropriate regulations as far as training data is concerned, privacy, and intellectual property. But I think it would be important to instate a better environment to incentivize research. I mean, from what I know, I remember Italy was one of the first to ban ChatGPT for a bit. So that kind of suggests that if I were an Italian AI researcher, that suggests that maybe this is not the best place for me to set up.
Hear a funny story? By speaking of this, if you want to hear a funny story, like very recently, the Italian ministry, I can't remember which one exactly, but it was hacked by God knows who, and these people actually got access to the president and the transport secretary's bank accounts. I mean, and they were afraid of ChatGPT. Like, just to give you a clear idea of how idiotic that move was. I'll let you continue.
Yeah, that's really that's really surprising. I wonder why that is. If maybe the like cybersecurity measures in place are not really adequate. I know there's a bit of a stereotype that the Italian government is really behind as far as technology is concerned. Do you think that's true in terms of cybersecurity?
No, the thing is that it's correct, but at the same time, when they try to call the people that are specialized in that, they are not paid like they are paid in other places in Europe. So of course, the people will not go to do the cybersecurity experts inside the public government, despite the fact that the public government can pay the same amount of a European country. And they don't do that simply for reason of equality, because the public can, we can't pay the people at the same amount. Another question is that most of the time, the leaks of informations in Italy does not come from cybersecurity, but rather from the forces of order himself. So in the case that Giuliano mentioned, it was people from the Guardia di Finanza, which is like the IRS military arm of Italy, and they did the whistleblowing, despite it's not a good way to do whistleblowing, because that you are undermining your government, so it's quite paradoxical. And the third thing, in my opinion, is that when you try to do that, to put new technology, you don't have a turnover of the old people in time. You have many old people that they don't want neither to train, neither to update, neither to fire themselves from the place. In fact, usually with Lorenzo and Giuliano, we talk about to put a limit of age, so in the sense that after you reach a certain age, you have to to move out from the public companies. But of course, now you can't do that because we have the same type like the liberals in Canada. They say this is racist, political correctness, ageism, all the kind of prejudice that they invent to prevent people to do something. And we have the same amount here, because here we have to think that the older people are revered, despite the fact that the retirement scheme has been made everything worse. So we have that because of them. The agricultural upgrading, we don't have that because people want traditional way to do stuff. That's all the issue. It's a cultural shift reason, a demographic problem itself, and another it's an economic problem, because if the government would pay the people like the other European entities pay people in that sector, private companies would say, but we can't pay that kind of amount for you like in the public. And so most of the people will go in the public. So you can see the trilemma of the thing. Yeah. Giuliano, you have to unmute your microphone.
Yes, you're muted.
Sorry about that. But the other funny thing I forgot to mention is that when they banned ChatGPT, the reason behind it is that they claimed that there was that ChatGPT stole people's data, and then they managed to have their data stolen by hackers, but they were like their bank accounts. That was so crazy. And well, in terms of the European situation, like I don't know, maybe you're familiar with Mario Draghi. So he recently released a report about the European competitiveness, and he said that we are not investing in AI, and we are lagging behind the United States, North America in general, in terms of competitiveness in the digital sphere. But not just in terms of that, but also in terms of economic freedom, which I think we all hold dear here. Which is a European country that you'd find most attractive and interesting in these regards?
In terms of economic freedom and
economic freedom and free market policies in general.
I suppose I'm not very sure, but I probably point towards Luxembourg or Switzerland. I know that these are major hubs of innovation, and it's a lot easier to start a company in these in these countries. Although that said, I know with the Italian bureaucracy, it's a lot easier to start a company most anywhere else.
Yeah, and not just to start it, but also to keep it alive. But you know what they tell you in Italy? They would tell you that you support tax havens. It's easy to talk about Switzerland. It's a tax haven. It is not. Neither is Luxembourg. And at some point in Italy, we had a guy, Calenda, saying that the Netherlands are tax havens, and even the French newspaper Le Monde said the same fucking thing. And I went checking the income tax brackets and rates in the Netherlands, and it's not.
Oh no,
a tax
no, because the thing is that the criteria of tax haven are not the legal ones. They are the ones invented by the Oxfam remember the same Oxfam that has many legal causes because of harassment and other stuff. So remember Oxfam, that also gave a lot of problem of the British government in the last years of the conservative people, and is doing the same in Europe per se, because he's inventing a stupid criteria for tax haven. For example, also Ireland was considered as a tax haven for certain companies like Google, Apple, and other stuff. And also Scandinavia have been at risk. Despite that they tried to correct themselves, because otherwise Oxfam can do bad things to them. We don't know which ones, but okay. From what we know, Norwegian now has a problem because many billionaires and millionaires are moving out of the country. And now they're having also an energy crisis because of Germany that doesn't have any nuclear reactor. And instead, Finland and Sweden, they are in a right-wing government and they are resolving their issues. So you can imagine how these Oxfam things are not true. And if we were a tax haven, we don't have this problem. So the morality of the question is better to be hated by Oxfam rather than be loved by them in reality.
So so we, especially Italy, but not just Italy. I mean, it has been lagging behind in so many respects. Like, for example, if you have a problem with the law, for example, if you're a company and you're waiting for payments and you still haven't got them, like the judiciary will take up to 10, 12, or 12 years to tell you whether you were right or wrong. And I'm not to mention immigration. By the way, like I don't know if you're familiar with the Italian immigration situation, like all these people coming to Sicily from Africa.
Yeah, I understand that you have a far worse issue with illegal immigration because of your proximity to like Libya, for example.
Yes.
I don't know how many of them stay. I figure most try to go up to Germany or Sweden, where they can get a lot more state assistance.
But at the same time, the Scandinavian countries, included Denmark, they are being able to create good closed borders. And the issue now is that we're trying to create a system like the Australian ones, when you can put the people on another place before to make enter Europe. And we are having problem with the judiciary to do that, because we are inventing human rights on human rights on human rights on human rights to make them go in Albania.
Let's just. Did you know about these centers that Italy and Albania have agreed on? Did you hear
They
about
are
I think I read about it once.
So
Is it being held in Albania, or is it being held outside?
No, they should be held in Albania.
Okay.
Because they have, it's a softer way than the Rwanda plan, because in reality, they are not there to remain there. They are there because we have to decide if they can enter or not. Also because, as you know, now that we are having still other episodes of Islamic terrorism, we need to check, because they come from Muslim countries. So we need to know. And now, especially that many people are using the so-called tadiyya, so they lie about their religion and then they do terrorist attacks. You should be more careful about that. But despite that, the judge, in the name of human rights, they don't allow to do that.
So basically, the Italian judiciary forced the government to accept people who were supposed to be held in those centers. But I will just now like to hear your view on that. Like, do you think that would be a good way to control illegal immigration?
Well, I find that I agreed with the Rwanda plan, and so based on what I know about that, I'm probably holding kind of the centers where I don't know the correct term for that, but the centers where you process immigration in Albania. I think that would probably make a lot more sense, especially because it's a lot closer. And it's also sufficiently, far removed to make it easier to deal with this. That said, I'm a bit skeptical about how efficient the agencies and groups involved in coming up with the immigration processing system. But I suppose that it's better than not doing anything, right?
Yeah, because in Italy we have two problems actually, because we need legal immigrants, but the companies don't want to do the bureaucracy themselves to make them come. And when the people come to work, the people that are able to come, they work in illegal places, the so-called the caporalato, the black farms, something like the stuff that is in China in practice. And another thing is that the fact that we try to make bilateral agreements with these countries, and most of the time, or they cheat or they raise the stakes, like Turkey does or Tunisia does. We say, okay, but you have to give us more international fund. Okay, but you have to give us more guarantees on something. And so there is the biggest problem. Instead, there are countries like Spain say, no, okay, we can accept everyone. We just legalize them, then we will see if they will find a job or not. Despite the fact that they can create problem after. Because I can understand that there are people that live in Italy from 10 years and then they want to become citizen, which is legitimate. But what they say is that if people enter there, they will find them at work and then they will legalize them. No, I would personally, I would ask first if with which reason they will come. If they don't have a visa, I would interrogate them, because if they do like the guy in Homeland that they fake to be human defenders, Homeland, Giuliano, the series, the one with the US soldier. I mean, they can do like that. They say, I'm a human rights activist. Let me enter. How can you say that you are a human rights activist without any document on you and without any visa? How can I know that? You can be a terrorist like the one in Germany, in Magdeburg. But people, they still say, no, this is far-right terrorism. No, that is a Muslim that is faking to not be a Muslim. How can they say he's a far-right guy? Do you think that a guy with that kind of style of dressing and that kind of culture is a member of AfD? I don't think so, to be honest. There are still journalists that say this is far-right terrorism. I don't think that guy is a far-right terrorist. It's an Islamic terrorist.
Indeed, people make up all sorts of crazy shit to be allowed in Europe. But I'll tell you what I would do, and then maybe if you can share with us the Massimo Mazza policy on that. I would issue like a limited amount of passports, and introduce some like strings attached, but not to limit, but to give them more points if they meet certain criteria, because in Italy, people, when you say that we need more immigration, people say, no, we don't want people from Africa. I'm not saying we should let those guys in. Italy is loved by Koreans, Chinese, Japanese, North Americans, Europeans. Everyone wants to live. Lots of people want to come to live in Italy, and then they have to face the insane bureaucracy when they get in. So just because we don't want the Africans, we are making it harder for the decent people to settle here. So I would issue us a limited amount of passports and say, please do take it, with some strings attached to it. But I don't know what you think of that, and what would you, if you would do anything different?
Yeah, that sounds like a sensible policy. I mean, I think it's worth looking into. What it's better to give a limited amount of passports to people that we believe are better able to fulfill, to help address shortages in the labor market. So people with certain skills and education backgrounds, people who are also better able to integrate for whatever reason, people also with lower, who lack a criminal background, of course, would be very important as well. I think that's definitely a good step in the right direction.
Yes, because what the problem we have here, Massimo, I don't know if you know the works of Brian Kaplan, the one of Open Borders, the one that wrote about the open borders, The Economist from Mason.
I'm not familiar, unfortunately.
And the guy say that some people confund open borders with the fact, like some left-wing people, let's enter all the humanity here because we are rich and the poor have to find the rich. And the guys say, no, wait, that doesn't mean that, open borders. Open border means the principle of the gate. People arrive. They have reason to arrive. They have to do some stuff to enter. Okay. They can pay a tax to enter. Okay, they will pay a tax. They have to have a certain job before to enter. Okay, they can. They have to be Christian, and the Christian arrives first, and then they can arrive the Muslim. Okay. For example, a principle that he said is that from Muslim countries, for example, we should only accept women instead of men. So women alone. You understand the reason why? Because at least they can be free to be women in the way they want. We will not have a guy that will beat them if they don't do what they say. And another thing that he said is that, for example, if people are more educated, we should prefer the people more educated. But at the same time, we don't have to tell that people, hey, if you have a PhD, you cannot be a builder. If you want to be a builder or a bricker, you can do that. Because it can happen. I can tell you an episode about it. I want to work in a department store, in a clothes store, and the people doesn't allow me to do that job because, hey, but you have 2 bachelors. You shouldn't do this kind of job. There are plenty of jobs for you that you have 2 bachelors, which is not true in Italy. It's a fucking lie that there are jobs for people, or you enter in the government, and we have a friend of ours that tried to work with a politician and it went fucking bad. Or you try to go in the public institution, and you have to wait for the public examination. They don't always come for the ministry or other stuff. Sometimes they are for some small city council in Lombardia or in other places with 6,000 inhabitants. Why should I go in a place like that, honestly? With 2 degrees. That is the big problem. And another one is that there are many jobs that Italian they don't want to do. For example, we lack of electricians, plumber, builders, and despite that, we have guilds that say no, we don't have to take these people. While I would say no, we have to take these people, because if there is people from whatever want to do this job, why shouldn't do that? You don't want that they have the citizenship. Who cares? At least they give them a permanent residence or something that allows them to renew easily their visa. It's not to say they should all be citizens. In Italy, instead, we have left-wing people that say you should all be citizens. They arrive, they are Italian citizens. Why? With which reason? Why is that? It would be a good way to. It's like in Canada, all the Chinese that will arrive, they will all become Canadian citizens. Which it will be also easier for Xi Jinping do interference in the Canadian government as he did in Trudeau period.
But I mean, if you're curious about Italian crazy stuff, would be glad to tell you for hours. But
Exactly.
I'd like to get to a more global like perspective. Like for example, you know that Milei from the Argentinian president, he has Italian roots. Like he recently got Italian citizenship for him as well as his sister. His little
Yes,
sister,
Karina.
or older sister. Is she older or younger than him?
Older. Karina is older.
And he's a sister. And so the Italian government boasts about this. Like they invited Milei to their like local event, like the party event at Atreyu. Like and even Elon Musk has taken part to this event, but a while back. And so what's your perspective on Milei, his policies, and if you think he's going in the right direction, and if you think that there are some things that could be imported in Canada?
Yeah, I think that Milei's policies are really interesting. I would say I'm not quite ready to conclusively state whether I think that it's worked or not. I viewed it as an immense gamble, but I think that it's. I'm quite grateful for the fact that we're seeing real changes in Argentina, and that will give us insight as to whether such a policy would work in Canada. I think, since I generally lean towards towards more libertarianism. I've obviously been a bit more sympathetic about it, but seeing the short-term consequences of the policy is kind of alarming. That said, I'm hopeful that it's going to work out in the long term, reduce the bureaucracy and really see greater investment in Argentina and lower inflation. I think we've already seen lower rates of inflation already, so that's looking quite good.
Yeah, I mean, we in Italy we are very much interested in what he's doing, not just because of the old and the historic relations between Italy and Argentina, but also because we are supporting free market policies, and we are convinced that Italy desperately needs policies. So we are observing what he's doing with lots of curiosity and interest. And it's very interesting because the Italian government is doing the opposite of what Milei is doing, but they are saying, "Oh, it's so cool! We are inviting him to our show, our party, our national event." And
Yeah, mostly the reason is because of a generational divide, because the people that of the right wing that are over 50, but maybe we cannot say also over 60, when they say Milei, they say they're anathema. So they think that will destroy them in practice, because we lived in the period with the great Christian Democracy Party that, like a benevolent state, arrived, give foods, give toys, give money to people, give public places, and so they are scared about it. Instead, the young are less scared. But we have an issue. The right wing are okay with them. It's the left wing people they are not okay with them.
oh no,
Especially we have many that they are in favor of Milei, but are the same people that say, yes, but to do a liberalization, we need a public institution to liberalize. And you say, what? Why you need a public institution to liberalize? Just do privately. There is the market. Why you should do publicly? So also for the taxes, for example, rather than simply make enter the Uber and all these companies, there should be a public policy first. There is this thing that in Italy, like Danny Roderick say, we need to have the public intervention to have a free market. We cannot have a free market without a free market. With the first stronger public institutions, which is the weird thing. That is also, but also the bad thing is that this thing it has been first proposed by people that were not Italians. But when he's arrived, these economists, Mariana Mazzucato, that proposed that, everything happened. Because now people say to have a free market, you need first to have a big state. Why?
I don't know if you're familiar with this economist, Mariana Mazzucato.
It's a strong enemy of Deirdre McCloskey, from what I understood.
Yeah, she's.
I'm not very familiar, but I'd like to read more on the position there.
Well, she says very interesting stuff. Like, for example, if he wasn't
the entrepreneurship state, inspired by the fact that the Chinese Empire created the Chinese Wall, despite the fact that the Chinese Wall was privately funded from the emperor.
And he says that if it wasn't for the state, the U.S. wouldn't have had like Apple, Google, and Facebook, and so on.
Or the internet, for example.
Yeah, she says that Europe is lacking. No, I mean her best joke, but it's not a joke, unfortunately. But her best joke it is that she says, "Where are the European Googles?" Spoiler: they're not there because the state isn't intervening enough. I mean, in Europe, we actually have the opposite thing happening.
Yeah, we have the GDPR, we have all the kind of policies that are intervening in the market, and we say we are not intervening enough. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have reached the 60-minute.
Yes.
I don't know how much time you have, Massimo. Like, I think I'd have at least a final question for you, and I'll let my friends intervene more. I don't know how much time you have.
I'm good. I don't have anything planned.
Oh, or maybe you have questions for us. I don't know.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on like what kind of policies would you like to see be implemented in Italy to improve the current state of things economically?
Well, the first
Economically,
thing
okay.
for me, it should be how can I say in a way that is not too violent, because I say culling, but culling is too violent. A diminution of the power of the trade unions in Italy, first of all, and another one would be to deregulate
Deregulate.
most.
De-
No,
deregulate.
because I wish to say a process of deregulation, so we didn't have the time to say it.
A deregulation process.
Yes, and especially for small medium enterprises, but for a reason, because in Italy we have the issue that people hate big companies, but at the same time it's the big companies that have created that regulations. So it's good to have big companies, but at the same time you should hate them for that reason. So the thing is that to create a good play field, because also in is the same problem of the US. You have big companies, and you love to have big companies that make a lot of money and that give a lot of taxes. But at the same time, they do the so-called regulatory capture. In Italy, we have that. We have we have little big companies, and they do a lot of regulatory capture. And despite that, people still continue to say in Italy, many economists, that the majority of the companies in Italy are small and medium enterprises, which is a problem, okay. But also in other countries, you have small, medium enterprises. So the first thing it should be to make these small, medium enterprises big as the small, medium enterprises in other countries, like in Canada or like in the US first. And another policy, in my opinion, it would be a radical change of the education system, in my opinion.
And
for me,
please, Lorenzo, go on.
I will be faster. For me, we need to fix the budget. So we need to cut in the public spending in several fields, because there are many wasting money in Italy. And we need to control the public debt, because every year the Italian public debt still increases, unfortunately, because of many public spending policies in everything. At the same time, actually, for example, the healthcare system is under the budget, and we need to reform. In my opinion, we need to reform with a hybrid model between more private sector for the healthcare in Italy and some public, or we can privatize all the healthcare system. But we need to have a better model for the healthcare system, because in Italy there is too much control of the public sector in the healthcare system, which makes more corruption, in my opinion.
And also, Maximo create the paradox. I don't know if you are familiar with the Obamacare, the fraud that happened. Rich people that having healthcare for free, and poor people that have to go to private clinics. In Italy, happened the same. Private people go to private clinics, poor people, and then you have the rich guy, because he's a friend with the general surgeon of the hospital, that go for free there, and it's like living in a 5-star hotel, which is quite ridiculous as a situation. Poor in the private clinic and rich in the public, in the well-worked, of course, public hospital, because if poor people go in public hospital, they live the hell for real in certain hospitals.
So, like, I can tell you the story. Like, I have this client. Like, I teach Italian to foreign people, and I teach English to Italians. So one of my students, one of my Italian students, he's a CEO of a M&A firm. So he's a high up guy, like a rich guy, and he had a problem to how do you say prostata? Oh my God, prostate.
Come?
La prostata. How do you say that?
In the, how can I say that? No, it's prostate in English.
Prostate. Yeah.
Yes.
He had a problem there, so he phoned the hospital and say, "Oh, I need to have something done with that." And they said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. The next time you can come is in 6 months." So he was like, "Oh my God, no, I need it now. I need it now." So he gave a phone call. He made a phone call to another friend who's the CEO of a huge pharmaceutical company, who's friends with the top doctor at that hospital, and You know when he got the next phone call by the hospital? 5 minutes later. He got a call and they said, yes, yes, please come tomorrow morning. We will be happy to serve you. We will be happy to help you.
Best explains clearly what I said you before, Massimo.
Yeah, that's what goes on in the Italian. And we also like as far as the healthcare is concerned, we also have like the regional differences in the way they perform. Like the northern hospitals are very good, and they attract patients from the southern regions. And the southern hospitals are basically used as an agency. You know those agencies that find jobs to unemployed people, like the same thing. Like
Yes.
like local politicians use. They say, if you vote for me, I'll find you a job at that hospital or at that. They have this usually the ASL, Azienda Sanitaria Locale, and they are in charge of laboratories and smaller hospitals, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and as for me, the policies would be like cut pension spending, cut social charges rates are huge in it. Like you pay 30% of what you earn only to fund pensions, and this is what is crushing income for young people, especially in this country, along with stagnant growth and lack of innovation and smaller businesses than the other countries have. And what I would do, and slash taxes, regulation, slash the judiciary more efficient to make it easier and faster to get a sentence. That I think these are the major things blocking the Italian economy. But some people in some profession being like a cartel, making it blocking competition, blocking innovation, and giving everything for themselves.
Yes.
That is what's blocking the Italian economy, basically. So
I think we can wrap up, Giuliano.
yeah, we can wrap up. Yeah, okay. The last thing I will ask you, Massimo, is from your perspective as a free market supporters and libertarian conservative, uh, what do you think Trump is the right guy? Are you attracted by his policies and promises?
I'm not quite sure. Reading about Trump's policies, I kind of take a bit of a seat back, and I like to view this as a great experiment. I know that Trump talks a lot about 19th century America, and I find the issue of tariffs and free trade to be a really interesting one because, of course, free trade has resulted in immense growth, standard of living, in a sense. It's also resulted in massive deindustrialization of huge portions of the United States. It's been a issue in transitioning the economy in many areas until a fully service-based one. So the question as to, we've also seen during the pandemic some of the issues that some of the consequences of having these immense and complex supply chain systems, having them disrupted, right? And so, of course, a lot of that can be addressed with greater domestic manufacturing, and tariffs obviously are effective way of encouraging growth of domestic enterprise in these fields. Am I excited about it? Well, not particularly, just especially given that I know it's probably going to have an adverse effect on the Canadian economy, but I do find it very interesting, and I want to know if that's going to deliver the results that are promised. I'm especially excited by the prospect of perhaps seeing, who knows if this will happen, but if the revenues coming from tariffs could be used to perhaps offset the need for revenue, like income taxation of regular American workers. I've always been a very strong believer in reducing income taxation and funding government services through any other means. And so if perhaps success in Trump's policy could illuminate maybe that this sort of thing is feasible and that we could perhaps remove the burden away from workers' incomes and simply just extract wealth from export like importers and purchasers of imported goods, then I think that that could present some unique opportunities for all of us. It's hard to conclusively say whether I think it will be good or not.
Totally agree.
I agree.
Massimo.
Okay, now I think we are 1 hour 16. I think we will stop here for the moment. Just to wrap up, so we covered Canada basically, Europe, Italy, and a bit of Argentina, and finally Trump. And I think that Massimo's perspective is quite I should say conforms to what we think as a supporter of free market and libertarianism would most likely say. And we'll be happy to have you back here again whenever you want to discuss many other topics and to maybe go a little bit deeper into Canada maybe next time, because it is not a very much covered topic, I'd say. And so, okay, maybe my friends would like to say something just to conclude, and then we can say goodbye.
No, I just want to remember the people to put a like and to follow after on YouTube the live, to if something it was forgotten or it was missed, and also to have the possibility to see the translation in Italian of all the interview. And I would ask also to Massimo a favor to remain after the live if he can, to discuss something with him, and that's it. And
Yes, exactly.
Another thing, perfect. And another thing, I would remember all the people that are online, the various social of the channel, or where to follow Giuliano, Lorenzo, and all the people. And wait a second.
Sì, dovremmo dirlo in italiano. Allora, vabbè, faccio la conclusione, vabbè, in italiano veloce.
And now you do the version in Italian, okay? Like in Canada, allora, French and English.
French and English, like, ok. Allora, abbiamo ringraziato il nostro ospite Massimo per essere venuto. Con lui abbiamo parlato del Canada, dell'Europa, dell'Italia, intelligenza artificiale, Milei, Trump, un po' di tutto. Quindi noi vi incoraggiamo, come sempre vi chiediamo di metterci un like al video, di condividere, di mandarci commenti con idee, potete anche mandarci a fare in culo, basta che ci diciate qualcosa. So thank you Massimo, and we'll stay in touch. Bye bye.
Grazie.